Hey everyone, you're listening to the Ratcast. It's November the 8th, 2018, and I'm your host, Ratman. I hope everyone's having a good day. Just gonna jump right into it. If you're not sure what's going on with the channel, whatever, go back to my last video. It has more of an introduction that'll get you caught up if this is your first time listening. So obviously the biggest news that I'm gonna talk about is the 2018 midterm election in the United States. If you weren't following it, I don't know what else you were doing, because it's been the biggest topic that everyone's been talking about. It's kind of been the center of everyone's universe for the last week or two. Lot of big changes happening. You've probably heard by now, the Democrats took back the House. Republicans still control the Senate, but I think a lot of people, myself included, are pretty excited that at least we have the potential to have some check on the president's power. And I should probably go ahead and qualify everything I'm going to say with, I'm a registered Democrat. I don't love I kind of hate the Democratic Party, especially after the 2016 election. I think they bungled so many things, messaging, the candidates they put up, all, the stuff with the primaries. There's a whole, there are books about it now. There's tons of information about, why the Democratic Party is sort of ineffectual and despised by even a part of its base. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, if it's first time listening, not viewing, you probably know that I'm pretty radical left in the political spectrum in the United States. But I'm gonna try to put all of my cynicism and all of my tanky beliefs to the side for the next couple of minutes while I'm analyzing what's going on with the elections. I know that we had a lot of candidates win on my quote unquote my side, and a lot of them are flawed people. A lot of them are I expect to see a lot of, corporate kind of stooge Democrats who are basically like Republicans, but they like gay marriage and weed, which honestly I hate. And honestly, I'm going to be okay with it right now, because any victory that was taken away from the president is worth at least being slightly optimistic about. In my point of view, I know there are some people who are so far to the left they don't even vote, and they just like, okay, we need to overthrow the government, and we need massive social change, revolution now. And I agree with that, but I don't necessarily see the harm in voting. It took me, at least at my precinct, it took like 5 minutes. I walked in, there was one dude in front of me. He took the paper ballot, I took the machine, and I was out of there in 5 minutes. It was no hassle. Obviously, if you are in a different part of the country, if you're from Georgia or really any red state, and you happen to be on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, or if you happen to be on the higher melanin spectrum, there probably was a concerted effort to get you not to be able to vote, or at least not be able to vote quickly and efficiently, like is sort of what we expect to happen in a functional democracy. That you probably heard about the Georgia governor race, where there's been a lot of to do about voters not being counted, or people being purged from the rolls, and just all sorts of really blatant voter suppression. By the way, that was a dog that barked in the background. My house has a lot of dogs in it, so hopefully she'll be quiet for the rest of the night. But if she barks again, I just want to apologize. Usually she's a good dog, and she's trying. She's just having an anxious night. Anyway, yeah. So like I said, for me, voting wasn't a big issue. It was in and out. But that experience was definitely not universal across my state, or across the country as a whole, but definitely not even across my own state. And that's fucked up. And hopefully, with the Democrats having more power, there will be some sort of pushback on this problem. But a lot of it is, sort of state-based, or even like county-based. depending on, who controls the elections in the state. I mean, it's a Secretary of State per state, so it kind of depends on their political leaning and how much the Supreme Court of the state is going to get involved if there's a challenge brought to the way that the districts are set up. And they're having a lot of those challenges recently about, people saying, this isn't right, especially if it's racially focused, which it almost always is. People not familiar with the American electoral system or American politics, African Americans tend to vote Democratic. Not as a monolith, but black people tend to vote more towards the left. There's a lot of reasons for that, especially since, David Duke endorsed the president, who happens to have an R by his name. So there's probably, and that's, not, and that doesn't just hold to the last election, that holds for a long, long time. Anyway, so hopefully those problems will be sorted out. I don't have a lot of hope for that. I think that if these things do get sorted out, it'll be a long time coming. There's a lot of deeply racist people and a lot of systems, even people who aren't racist, they are in racist systems that were put on, they were put together a long time ago and they're still in place, and dismantling them and putting something else in place that works better for everyone is going to be a process that takes a long time, especially with a lot of active resistance from, top down. I think that if the RNC could make it hard for people to vote against them, that's what they want to do. And they really have no incentive to make elections more open and to, they don't want more people to vote. They want their people to vote, and they want anyone who is going to vote against them or is likely to vote against them to have less access to the polls. I mean, you can look at everything from, even the war on drugs. Well, a lot of the war on drugs, it's racially focused, and that's just a small part of, people being incarcerated and then disenfranchised, and then, making it incredibly difficult to regain your voting rights. That's fucked up. I suspect that it's going to continue to be fucked up, but, I said I'm not going to try to be super cynical tonight, so I'm going to, things will get better. So after that, 7.5 minute of me rambling, I kind of want to get into some of the races I was watching and some of the results that I liked, some of the things I found interesting or troubling about Tuesday night. So I'm just gonna jump right into that. Oh, she barked again. You're probably gonna hear me clicking a little bit because I have I have 2 monitors and I'm gonna be clicking around in news stories and whatnot. Okay, dog, you are really driving me crazy. All right, so probably a lot of people's, one of the most exciting races or the most high stakes races was a Senate race in Texas. Famous, well deservingly disliked piece of shit Ted Cruz was up for re-election. And he had a strong progressive challenger in O'Rourke. Unfortunately, the worst person won, so we're gonna have to put up with Ted Cruz for a couple more years. And as much as it pains me to see his face in news stories and whatnot, it is something we're gonna have to just live with for a while. I didn't have a lot of hope for that race to begin with. I kind of assumed that Cruz would win, but it was closer than I thought it was going to be. I think that he ran a really good campaign. He really ran with his base. He was pretty uncompromising, I think, O'Rourke was. I don't think that maybe that was something that kind of doomed his campaign from the start. He's in Texas. It's a red state. Even with, growing diversity and, large urban areas in Texas that are, relatively progressive or even extremely progressive, it's still kind of an uphill battle to be a Democrat in Texas. And I understand that. I think he should be extremely proud with what he was able to accomplish. People are already like, oh, 2020 you should run for president. I don't know if that's going to happen. I kind of doubt it, because I feel like Trump would pretty handily be like, you can't even beat Lying Ted, so why the fuck would anybody want to elect you, you dipshit? And obviously he's wrong, but I think that would be a really effective short-term debate tactic to just sort of poo-poo him, be like, oh, you can't even win against, a sitting senator that everybody fucking hates. So why would you come up here and challenge, an incumbent president? That's, I think, I don't know how well that would play nationally, but at least in Texas, I think, that might be pretty effective, unfortunately. So yeah, I was pretty bummed out about that. Like I said, I wasn't really expecting a huge upset, but anything that makes Ted Cruz happy pretty much, ruins my day and, grinds my gears a little bit. The only hope now is, someone's going to splash water on him and he'll melt like the little witch he is. Or, maybe he'll just continue to melt. Like, he's looking pretty melty recently. I mean, he's always looked kind of melty, but he seems like he's aging very quickly. He's like a pumpkin in, like mid-November. He's just slowly, like, losing shape and definition in his face. And eventually by, like, December, he's going to be just sort of this gross, rotting lump on your front porch that you want to scoop off and throw in the garbage, but if you touch it, it might just kind of, plop in your hands and you have to scrape it up. And that's how I feel about Ted Cruz. He's a disgusting, rotting gourd who, scary during October, all too horrifying in November, and especially for the next couple years when we have to deal with his bullshit once again. Also, as a side note, obviously I don't agree with Republican politics at all. But some of them, especially the late Senator John McCain, I think was a decent enough guy, despite all of the war crimes and whatnot. Ted Cruz as a man, I think I have as little respect for him as I do anyone who is alive or dead. I think just as a person, he's so loathsome and sniveling and just gross and kind of sad, but not sad where you feel bad for him, just sad like, God, this really is the worst humanity has to offer. And it's a shame he's gonna stay in power. But that's democracy. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes you lose and you get the worst rotting pumpkin of the bunch. I'm going to get off this election before I, spiral into some sort of long-winded, depressed rant about how Ted Cruz is, the worst person in America. Okay, flip side of that. Fucking Scott Walker lost his re-election campaign in Wisconsin, and I am beyond excited. I don't know anything about his opponent. His opponent could be, like, it doesn't matter. They're not Scott Walker, so I'm like, absolutely just well done, sir. Or ma'am, I don't remember his name right now, and I don't want to Google it because it's going to make a bunch of weird clicking noises and screw up my audio. But it's not Walker. I think if you are a teacher in Wisconsin, or if you're any kind of public employee, you should breathe a sigh of relief. Obviously, don't let your guard down. You never know what these fuckers are up to. But, you did it. Everything you did is worth it now. All the fighting, all of the protesting, all of the, sleepless nights, everything you've put up with, you're going to get a reprieve from that, at least for now. And I think that's something that we can all sort of be happy about. And plus, it's just nice when these guys lose, especially, you see him lose in 2016. That's good. But, they still get to retain whatever position they had, like he still got to go back to Wisconsin and be in charge. But now it's like, he's gone. He's going to, he's probably going to go work for the Koch brothers and make like tens of millions of dollars a year, which, well deserved. He's one of the biggest, crony capitalist, Koch brothers bootlickers in the country, at least one of the most publicly well known. I think most Republican politicians, and I think most politicians in general, are sort of stooges for big money, and big money from any direction, whether it's two private assholes or if it's pharmaceutical companies, weapons companies, whatever. Again, putting all of my Marxist bullshit aside for just tonight, I'm just gonna say I'm really, really happy that Scott Walker lost his re-election campaign, because he was a shit. He was just one of the worst, at least one of the most notorious governors, especially for people who, want public education to succeed and wants, teachers to be treated with respect and dignity and have, healthcare, and wants kids to get good public education. I think that it's a really positive sign that he is no longer going to be the governor of Wisconsin. In this moment, I am a Packers fan. I am a cheesehead. I would kiss a cow. I'm so happy for you guys. Congratulations on not having Scott Walker represent your state. That's, golf clap. You got this. In another story of me just being petty and happy that somebody that I hate lost their re-election campaign, notorious homophobe and sort of just scary looking woman Kim Davis of Kentucky has lost her re-election campaign. People remember her from, she refused to issue marriage licenses to gay people, refused to do her job. She was the county clerk, in I think Moorhead, Kentucky, and she's out, and it's great. And there's not a lot to that story. She was an awful person. People realized it. People rose up. Someone challenged her, and she's out. I hope Mike Huckabee is crying tears tonight. Well, this is like the 8th, so he was probably crying tears a couple nights ago. The turnaround on this podcast is probably a little longer than it should be, and I'm aware of that. But I was staying up watching election coverage until like 2:30, and I was like, if I record a podcast now, it's probably going to be even more of like a weird stream of consciousness fever dream than it usually is, of just me rambling to the microphone. So if I was going to record one, at like 3 a.m. on election night, it's probably just going to be like, okay, maybe give it a day or two to ruminate and get some thoughts going. If that benefited the podcast or my personal opinions on the issue is, remains to be seen, but I feel pretty good about it. All right. More politics. All right. So we're going to go right into former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Oh man, he has been, he was asked to resign by the president. Which is, polite Washington code for he was fired. What is there to say? Jeff Sessions was an awful, small-minded, racist man who had no business being the Attorney General of the United States. And seeing him be removed now is gratifying. I'm sure whoever they get to replace him is going to be awful too. I have no illusion that Donald Trump is going to pick a good person to fill the role, because, he's pretty much incapable of doing that. For all I know, Jared Kushner could be the next Attorney General. That doesn't seem that unlikely, because Jared Kushner is apparently qualified to do everything, even though he's a possible mute, incompetent, strange little rich boy. But, for what it's worth, Jeff Sessions is going to, shrivel back into his hole. Where is he from? Is he from Alabama? I feel like he's from Alabama. It's either Alabama or Mississippi. I'm going to Google that. Yeah, he's from Alabama. So he can go back down to Alabama and just live out the rest of his life in, I'm going to assume, a birdhouse. I can't imagine where he lives, but it's either a birdhouse, an anthill, possibly one of those little places where rats live in cartoons, where it's like a little door carved out of the baseboard of a house. Like he's just down there with like his all of his homophobe friends who are like scared to death of marijuana. And he should remain there until he dies, which can't come soon enough. You know, when you have the widow of Martin Luther King Jr. Saying that you are too racist for the position you're seeking, I think it's a pretty good indicator that you're not fit to serve in any capacity in the public sector anywhere in the country, let alone be, you know, the Attorney General of the United States. So, you know, R.I.P. Jeff Sessions. Go fuck yourself. You did a terrible job. You've done a terrible job your whole career. It remains to be seen if like Rod Rosenstein is going to get in power, or, you know, take over, because he was like the deputy AG. But Trump doesn't seem to be a fan of his either. I mean, based on the comments he's made about Rosenstein, you know, so he's probably going to find someone worse. I don't know where he'd find somebody worse. I mean, you have to sink lower than Alabama, so northern Florida, perhaps. I mean, you know, we'll see what happens. Okay, so in a semi not really related to Jeff Sessions story, Michigan is legalizing pot. It hasn't happened yet, but yes, it is time. The people of Detroit, Rock City, it is time to blaze it. As if you needed, you know, as if you needed it to be legal to start, but whatever, you know. Positive development. It's good. I think that if it's handled correctly, if you release marijuana offenders from prison, if they can regain their voting rights, which, you know, never should have been removed, if you can implement legalization in such a way where the revenue raised from the tax dollars is actually used to, you know, for the public benefit, you know, there's no downside to this legalization, and I think that Michigan should be very proud of itself. This is, you know, this is a good day, you know, I mean, generally for, like, you know, the abstract concept of freedom and personal choice, but also for, you know, not having the Attorney General think that marijuana is, you know, gonna turn you into some kind of murderer, psychopath. Like, was it Sessions who said that marijuana was like as bad as heroin or as bad as meth? He said something to that effect, where like how marijuana was like the worst drug. You know, who cares what Sessions thought? He was an idiot. He is an idiot. He's not dead. He's around. He's, like I said, you know, birdhouse, outhouse, wherever he's going. We're all looking forward to that. Okay, so that pretty much covers all of my political-ish rants for tonight. So if that was all you're interested in, you can probably tune out now. I'm probably going to rant on what I've been doing for the past couple days, what's been keeping up my time, how I'm entertaining myself, and, you know, what I've been doing apart from, you know, obsessively reading political news and not sleeping. Oh wait, before we get off politics, just a quick note: the first female Muslim congresswomen were elected on Tuesday, with names I'm not gonna mispronounce, you know, out of respect for my ability not to speak and out of respect for their electoral win. But I think that's a good step forward. Not a religious guy, but really anytime that a non, you know, Protestant white man wins any kind of elected office, you know, good indicator that we're doing something right as a country. And again, that was also in Michigan. So big, you know, big Tuesday for Michigan. All right, you know, shout out to Ypsilanti, my favorite weird sounding town in Michigan. All right, I just I just leaned my head way too close to the mic and I realized it's gonna like spike the volume right there. So apologies. Speaking of volume, I have again fiddled with my recording software. So if you've managed to listen this far and you have noticed a increase or decrease in quality, let me know. I will take your feedback and work it into my next show. Okay, so what have I been doing? The last show I mentioned a little bit about how Activision Blizzard had given away copies of Destiny 2, and that's what I've been doing, and I'm just going to talk about my opinions of the game so far, what I think, and sort of just general reactions or general thoughts on that. So, like I said last time, hadn't played. First one wasn't a PC game. I mostly game on PC now. I have for the last probably 5 years. Primarily PC. So, general thought, it's pretty good. The reason I wanted to pick it up or, download it, snag it while it was available was because I'm a huge Borderlands fan, and the game is kind of superficially similar to Borderlands. It's sort of a FPS RPG multiplayer. I think Bungie calls a shared world shooter, which is kind of MMO, but not really. We're gonna have microtransactions, but we're not gonna have a subscription payment. So you can pay what you want, sort of thing. Which I'll get to that. So as of now, I've played through the campaign as a warlock, which is one of the 3 classes, and I had a pretty good time. The campaign is really short. It was under 10 hours total, start to finish. That doesn't include side stuff I did. There's a lot of public events, which are sort of if you played the Final Fantasy 14, the newest Final Fantasy MMO, there are public quests. Also, it's a big thing in Guild Wars 2, where there's in the world map, there's something will happen. It's kind of a rally point. Everyone runs together, and they'll try to accomplish, kill a boss, protect something, or capture something, or whatever. It's just sort of an impromptu cooperative throwdown, and Destiny has those. They're pretty fun. You do spend a lot of time waiting for them to occur, because on the map it'll be public event starts in 3 minutes and 48 seconds, and then you just kind of stand there like an asshole, okay, is anyone gonna show up? What kind of events is it gonna be? What are we doing? But it is a pretty good way to get currency, which was almost useless in the game, because it's just you can buy 7 items from vendors that are actually with currency. You can also get loot drops and stuff. But it's about getting the faction resources, which are specific planetary items you use to give to faction NPCs. It'll basically you can grind rep for them, and every however many points you get in the rep, you'll get a little, what is essentially a loot chest, or a prize box. It'll pop open and you'll get some random shit from it, a weapon or a customization, not a skin or not skin, but a shader, which is a dye basically, or armor. And that's kind of just what you do. At least it's the one I'm at in the game now, where I've beaten the main story campaign up until whatever was free. I haven't purchased the DLC, and I won't at this price. I think now it's $40 and you get all the DLC, but I don't really see myself continuing to play as much now that I've finished the game. Gameplay's definitely fun, but I don't see myself investing a lot more time into it now that I'm sort of max level. Story's over. There is pretty typical arena based multiplayer stuff, reminiscent of Call of Duty or Halo or whatever, where it's team deathmatch, capture the point, that sort of stuff. It's decently fun. It seems a little weird matchmaking wise. I kept getting put into groups with, it's 6v6, and I kept getting put into groups with where it was me, 5 random people, and then the other people, it was like 6 people in a guild or a clan or a fact, like whatever. They were 6 people in a group, so like they would obviously proceed to just stomp myself in the randoms, which isn't Bungie or Activision's fault. That's just sort of the nature of organized groups versus unorganized groups. But it happened a lot, which makes me think that like either there are very few people actually playing this mode, which is called the Crucible, which is like the PvP mode, or you're really, really supposed to come in with a group and get ready to fight together, because otherwise you're kind of just going into matches pretty definitively getting stomped. Admittedly, I'm terrible at these kind of games, these online player versus player games. I usually avoid them. I played Overwatch for a while until it, started cracking my all my mental fortitude. All those Junkrat deaths, just it's too much for me. I had to bow out. I guess I'm playing a lot of Activision games lately. That's weird. Never been a big fan of theirs. I haven't bought a Call of Duty in like 6 or 7 years. Back from my console gamer shithead high school student days. That's not really here or there. But Destiny, yeah. So I went on the Wikipedia page, and apparently, like, this is hard to tell because it's not exact, but so far the franchise has cost like $250 million. Like $250 million, something like that, is what they say that, like, and that's the estimated budget of 1 and 2, because it's kind of like the franchise costs as much. Which, if that's true, seems insane. That's like Avengers money. That's like last 2 Harry Potter movie money. That's crazy. And while the game does look really good and sound really good, they've hired a lot of like familiar voice actors, which is sort of something that I feel like the game does as sort of a marketing ploy more than anything else, more than like actually engaging like with the story or whatever. It's more like, oh, we're gonna hire these people and then it's gonna get us some press. I remember the first game, it had Peter Dinklage in it. He voiced some character, I don't know which one, in the first game. And okay, sure, I guess if you want to put all that money up to get the press to talk about the actors you're hiring, sure. I mean, it worked for Bethesda, right? I mean, they had Patrick Stewart come in for 11 minutes in Oblivion until he got out of that really awful opening section, and then he just dies and never comes back. They did the same thing with Sean Bean in Fallout 3, where he's like your dad, and he's like in the first like 10 minutes, and then the last like 5 minutes, and then like the rest of the game is just like random kind of crappy voice actors who don't really add much to the immersion. In fact, a lot of the voice actors in Bethesda games are really kind of awful, my opinion. Obviously, not universal, but Jesus, I mean, especially in Oblivion, like, besides Patrick Stewart, that game had like 4 voice actors, and they were all pretty bad. And you'd hear people just like yell at each other with the same voice, which is kind of funny because like that game had like dynamic conversations. I don't know how I got to Oblivion from this. Obviously, people who are listening are just like, this is a waste of my time. He's not even talking about Destiny. And, 10 minutes ago, he was talking about how much of a shit Scott Walker was. So, admittedly, this is a very eclectic sort of thing. If you're not into, leftist politics, whatever video games are currently being given away by major publishers in an effort to get you to, purchase microtransactions, or if you don't just love my, beautiful, beautiful sounding voice, it might be hard for this show to find an audience, and I understand that. I'm not exactly out here doing I don't even know what's popular on YouTube besides like BuzzFeed. I know BuzzFeed's popular because I see it on the recommended videos all the time, but I'm not super familiar outside of the one where they go and try food. I know that one. Worth it. I know that one because of my girlfriend and because of a ContraPoints video, and she's a YouTube sensation who is sensational, and you should definitely subscribe to her if you are listening to this on YouTube, which you probably are because it's not posted anywhere else yet, and you somehow stumbled on this video and you haven't heard of ContraPoints yet. You should definitely check her out because she puts out the best most consistently excellent content that I know of, at least within politics and current events and that kind of stuff. And it's also really funny and well produced, and it's great. If you just ContraPoints, youtube.com/ContraPoints, if you've somehow stumbled upon this really weird video that like 20 people are gonna watch, and you haven't heard of this creator who has hundreds of thousands of subs, but for the one person who's gonna hear this, like, oh my god, I should look at that, you're welcome in advance, because I have enriched your life by referring you to someone who can enrich your life in a way that I never could. Okay, I've forgotten what I was talking about now. Yeah, so Destiny. Right, so this game cost $250 million. It kind of seems like it shouldn't have. I mean, it's gorgeous. Even on my relatively low spec PC, it looks gorgeous, and the sound effects are good, and the voice acting is good, even if it's a little grating to hear all these sort of peppy little voice actors who are good voice actors, but like they don't really fit the tone. And the game does have like, I think, a tone problem, especially with the writing and like the sitting. I feel like it's trying to be like really self-important and like this like kind of epic science fiction space opera thing, but then it is kind of a 6-hour somewhat generic save the world from aliens plot that I think is like sort of approaching like philosophy, in the sense that's like, oh, it's this big story about humanity overcoming, or humanity and like purple humans who are just humans but like purple for a reason that wasn't explained in the game. But then it would have kind of weird off-color jokes, basically from the guy from Firefly, Nathan Fillion, who voiced like the comic relief character in this game, who's like a cyborg who basically acts like the space cowboy that he played in Firefly, but a robot. Which was funny, but it was also kind of like, this doesn't seem like it fits with the rest of the game and how the other characters act. But it didn't make the game any worse for me, but it made the game more confusing, because I'm like, this tonally doesn't feel right, that there's like this wacky cyborg robot android guy run around, and everyone else is being like really, really like, we have to save humanity from the red alien menace people who are gonna like literally blow up the sun, which is a little like, okay, I feel like maybe do a second draft of the story. I feel like the story's, as far as like doing its job, it's like, okay, it all kind of works. Humanity's beaten up, they have to leave the planet, regroup, come back, win. I mean, sort of, it does what it needs to do to get as a vehicle for the gameplay. But as far as what I feel like it's trying to be more than what it is. I think it really feels like less than the sum of its parts, especially if those parts cost $250 million, which, again, based on what I was able to find out, that's approximately what people say it costs, what Bungie and Activision say it costs. Sometimes less is more, sometimes more quality is better, as far as writing. But there's some other weird things, like the AI for the enemies seems really, really basic. Like, I swear that I had some more engaging firefights in like the original Half-Life, which was made in like the Clinton administration. Like, a lot of the enemies seem really brain dead. Like, they won't respond even if you've already like shot them a couple times. Like, they'll just stand like close to cover, but just like stand with their backs turned to you, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna pretend this is engaging. Like, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief for some of like the really slow parts where it picks up, and there are definitely parts of the game where everything kind of clicks and the gameplay clicks, and everything just sort of works, and those times are great. I think that when everything comes together, it is really fun, and it's really exciting, and it's not different. I mean, it's sort of what you'd expect if you've played any sort of semi-modern first-person shooter, but it works well, and it is fun, and what else do you want for free, right? I mean, shit. Uh, which brings me to another point about the whole Activision giving this away for people thing. So it is the full base game. Like, it's not the latest expansion. I think it's called like Forsaken, or the other couple expansions that are now bundled with Forsaken. It is just like Destiny 2 Classic, which is fine. Like, you know, you get what you pay for. But then you get into the game and it's like, once you hit the level cap, which is level 20, which you can be at in like 10 hours. Like, if you've done the whole main campaign, you're pretty much level 20. Like, that's, I think you might even have to be at level 20 before you beat the game. But you're either like 19, 20 when you finish the game, so you're almost done. And then the game's like, do you want to buy some loot boxes? Do you want to spend $5 of your real money to buy our fake extra currency so you can buy these little chests that might contain, you know, epic, legendary, exotic gear, whatever, which isn't technically gambling because we've made you exchange your real currency for our fake currency before you gamble with it. So it's not illegal. Guys, we promise it's totally legal for now, and there's nothing the Belgian government can do to stop us. I thought that was kind of weird because I'm like, you know, I just finished the game. I've already kind of hit level cap, and now I'm like, to progress my character further, do I need to start throwing money at the game? Which I'm not going to. Like, I don't pay for microtransactions in games. Like, I didn't buy loot boxes in Heroes of the Storm or Overwatch or anything. And I'm not about to start buying loot boxes for Destiny, even if like, oh, they're only $5. But like, yeah, that's $5 that I would rather spend on anything else. You know, I think that I'm not against expansion packs. Like, I'm not against the idea of like Forsaken coming out and being good and people buying it because it's like a whole new campaign and everything else. I've heard it's really good. I've heard that it's better than the base game, which, okay. Still not going to buy it for $40 because I feel like I where I'm at now, I'm kind of burnt out on Destiny. Like, I don't want to replay it. You know, there's two other classes, but I feel like, you know, broad strokes, kind of the same. There's like a shieldy guy and like a snipey, like headshotty guy, which is, you know, fun. But I was happy with the class I picked. Don't really feel the need to, you know, kind of re-roll and then run through the campaign again, especially with a lot of the stuff was like, you can't skip the cuts, or you can't skip like the long, the godforsaken loading times, which I swear were like a huge, and again, that could just be my shitty computer, but I'm like, it takes forever. Like, if you want to go to another planet, you have to open your menu, open like a star map, pick the planet, and then like you go to your ship, and it'll just kind of stay on the ship looking at the planet for a while, and then it'll just be loading. And then there's like a long cutscene of you flying towards the planet, and then there's like a black screen where it's loading in the corner, and then you're on the planet. Like, it takes a long time to not to get anywhere, like in the maps, like when they're open, you're there. There's no loading times there, but like between the maps, it's like, oh my god, this is taking forever. You know, and again, that could be my computer being shitty, and if it is, I apologize to the Activision reps who I'm sure are watching or listening to this podcast. I'm, you know, wholeheartedly, guys, I apologize. Also, what the fuck was that Diablo game you're making? I literally, that's not true. I understand. You know, it's microtransactions, it's low frills, it's easy, it's, you know, pay to win. You're gonna make a lot of money, I'm sure. You know, congrats on the money you're gonna make from this new Diablo experience that nobody seems to want, least of all myself. But I wasn't really a Diablo fan in the first place, so I wasn't exactly. I think it's funny because it's really funny to watch people be like hyped up and lied to, and then like have their like really funny reactions about it. But that was my weird chair. I have a really old desk chair, and it squeaks a lot when I shift. So that wasn't a cat's tail being crushed under my foot. That was actually my chair being annoying right now. But yeah, overall, I would say Destiny 2 is definitely worth getting while it's free. And I almost feel like it should be a free-to-play game. Like, I almost feel that like they could release it for free and then just have microtransactions, and, you know, not hire the big name voice actors, and not have like the insane. I remember they had like a really big like marketing campaign for the game when it came out a couple years, like I think like last year, 2016. You know, if you save money on those things, I feel like you could probably release a leaner package with maybe even more features, like maybe even, you know, more time to actually focus on fixing some of the gameplay problems as opposed to just like, you know, sort of making it like a big, I guess it's not an annual release. I think there was a lot of time between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, but like, I feel like now they're trying to put out like DLC every couple months and just kind of keep the game as like a service, as opposed to sort of releasing a really fine product and then kind of building on that. Like I I played a lot of Borderlands 2, and I mentioned it earlier when I introduced this topic. The base game Borderlands 2 will last you for a really long time. And, you know, by the time you finish the main story, you're not going to be level cap. And there's a lot of stuff to do. There's raids, and there's you know, all sorts of stuff you can do. And there are raids in Destiny 2. I haven't got to them yet. I don't really feel that compelled to do them, but it's not really important. So then when they released like the expansion or the DLCs for Borderlands, they added a lot more stuff. And I didn't feel like I was supplementing a game that was lacking. I felt like I was adding on to a game that was an actual finished game that wasn't trying to fleece me for like, you know, $3.99 here, $5.99 here, you know, whatever. It felt like it was a real game, complete game. And then if you want to throw $9.99, you can play this whole sort of new thing in the Borderlands 2, you know, atmosphere, in the Borderlands 2 world, and without it feeling like a cash grab or like the thing you already bought for $60 was incomplete, you know? And I feel like if I had bought Destiny 2 with just what I've played now for like $60, I would have been like, was really, really short. And I don't see myself like going back and playing like the Crucible PvP for like a long time. I mean, it's kind of fun as a distraction from like, you know, running around the overworld. But I don't think it has the same long-term appeal as other games of its same type, even games that Activision publishes. So I don't know if it would have the same like staying power as other similar games. Especially now with like how gaming is now, where things are very trend focused and the turnarounds pretty quickly. You can have a game like PUBG come out and then like a Fortnite, and like, you know, now like every game has a PvP or a battle royale mode, and even the new Call of Duty apparently has that. I've not played that, and I probably won't, but I've heard it has a PUBG knockoff mode, which, you know, good for Activision being 2 years behind the trend. That's impressive for a company that's worth like $10 billion and, you know, owns World of Warcraft. You know, former industry leader and now sort of industry follower, Activision Blizzard. You know, I'm probably giving them a little too much shit. I mean, what I've played from them in Destiny 2 was fun. I didn't hate it. Wouldn't say I loved it. I enjoyed the time I spent with it. Glad it was free. Won't be. I mean, I might goof around a little bit. Like maybe see what some like the, you know, end game is with the base game. But even now, it's like, do you want to buy Forsaken? Okay, there's a dog barking again. All right, has it stabilized? Okay. Apologies again, dogs. What are you gonna do? You gotta love them. They are good boys and girls. So, if you had thought about playing Destiny before and you want to give it a try, I think it's still free from the battle.net application thing. Give it a whirl. It is like an 80 gig download, which seemed kind of crazy to me. I also have really slow internet, so maybe that's like for people who like live in more urban areas, like, oh yeah, 80 gigs, that's nothing, you know, 30 minutes, it's downloaded. But for me, it was like, this is like a half day endeavor to get downloaded, so I like just went away and did other things. But, you know, anyway, worth checking out, I would say, if you're bored or if you are into that sort of thing. And I was kind of into that sort of thing. I do like dogs. I really should record this at like 3 a.m. when everybody is asleep but me. But anyway, I was sort of in like role-playing first-person shooters, so this kind of appealed to me as an idea. I think the execution was decent. Progression seemed a little slow, which is, not the same thing as getting to level cap. I feel like even like gear progression seemed really slow. Like you would only get new guns and new armor like very infrequently. Not like if you play something like Torchlight or Diablo, like you're getting new shit almost every time you kill an enemy. Like there's always something dropping. Destiny, not so much. I feel like to get stuff, every time you picked up like a decent anything even like remotely worth having, not even things that were worth like selling, because the cap on your money is really low, but there's really nothing to buy with it anyways. It doesn't really matter. But I feel like everything you get that would be worth, actually adding to your build is at the end of like turning in a bunch of reputation things like tokens to a faction. So like every piece of gear you get that's like has a chance of getting on, because again, when you do the faction things, like it gives you like a loot box and it pops open and like you might get something that's worth having. Every time you get the chance of something that you might want, it's like a couple hours of grinding up reputation to get, and that just seems like, I mean, I know why. It's to incentivize that you just you just drop the $3 or $5 or whatever to get the the quick loot boxes from the cash shop. But that's an option for me because I don't want to support that. It's just some Activision has lots of money. They don't necessarily need to sort of balance their games in a way that makes you have to toss money at them for every little thing, and I don't really want to do that. But overall, inoffensive game. Decently fun. Probably would have been more fun if I had played it with like people that I knew in co-op, or even within like groups of PvP. Maybe I'll try that. I know a lot of other people who have computers who run this game, so I think maybe that's something I'll look into. And if I do, I'll revisit it in the next week's show. But if not, this is probably the last you're gonna hear about Destiny 2. So, all right. Well, I hope you had a good time listening to this. I'll be back this time next week, and if you have anything to say, say it below in the comments. If you want to subscribe. This is going to be a weekly thing. And other than that, I hope you guys have a good day, and don't work too hard.